Hi, I want to give the world the great Canadian message. I mean, not in words. Why say anything in words? Who cares about words? I'll say it in a song, or I'll say it in a drawing or a poem. Why words? I don't need words. The poet Keats thought words are magic. Do you think they're magic? I have a Keats poem coming up. I don't know, a couple weeks from now. The second coming. Ooh, very scary, very spooky. Very spooky, the second coming from like Yeats, but Yeats doesn't mean Jesus. Because Yeats, I didn't realize this until after I did the comic, but and then the song, but I think he was a Satanist. Anyway, I have like his poem coming up, and this week I'm going to be doing this. Well, it's almost ready. I have like a little bit left, and it's like a theological concept that's going to make you it's going to blow everyone's mind, and they're not going to need to pay attention to science anymore. I mean, the scientific arguments against Christianity. You know, you could pay attention to science, but it has no bearing to Christianity. Like, you don't, it doesn't knock over any Christian totems, you know. Anyway, what do I know? I'm a wiener dog. That's what they call me in Canada, a wiener dog. Actually, nobody calls me a wiener dog anymore. I'm talking about the old Canada. Like, I used to be a wiener dog, like in the 20th century. Everybody knows what a wiener dog means, you know. It means, I mean, every Canadian knows what a wiener dog is. I don't mean like everybody. I don't mean like Germans have to know what a wiener dog is. A wiener dog, I know what a wiener dog is. It's a dog that's a really long, no. No, in Canada, it's not a long dog. It's a person that only eats Kraft dinner and wieners. Okay, they don't eat salads, yet they display an exemplary level of health. And like, notice the way I say exemplary. Like, it's hard for me to say that word, exemplary. It's very hard for every Canadian. That's why we don't say exemplary level of health. We say ELH. Okay, so anyway, like it's if you display like an ELH of that, of a high level, and you eat wieners every day and Kraft dinner, then that's kind of considered like something kind of impressive in Canada. You're like, being called a wiener dog is actually kind of cool. Like, they never used to always call me wiener dog. You know, it depends what town I live in. You know, like, I've lived in a few. You know, in some towns they like me, and some towns they don't like me. That's Canada. You know, one town they call me the wiener dog, and one town they call me Skinny McGulliver. That's Canada. You know, that's how we are in Canada. You know, we have an ELH in Canada, and nobody knows what that means. If you're outside of Canada, you have no idea what I'm even saying. You know, that's Canada. Eat your greens and plenty of red meat in Canada. I don't think meat can be separated from Canada, because Canada is a Christian-founded country, and I don't think meat can be separated from Christianity, okay? I don't think it's possible. Like, I'll explain this in a video coming up, and people might think, oh, he's being facetious, he's being silly. He's being silly, but no, I'm not being silly. I think it's right in the Bible that meat is kind of delicious and wonderful, and it's for us. But it wasn't for us in the Garden of Eden, okay? But in this land, meat is like, we're supposed to eat it, okay? Yeah. Anyway, wieners aren't my thing. I you know, that's just, I'm sorry for disappointing you. People try to make me like them, but I'm a donut man. You know, I'm old Canada. We liked donuts. We didn't like wieners so much. It's like, I mean, that's a weird thing. Like when people were called like wiener dogs, like it wasn't even good wieners. Like it's the crappy old wieners that they used to have. And my tastes are much better right now, but I can't eat. I eat nice sausages and better meats. Okay, but donuts, you can't make a highfalutin donut. You can't make a donut that's gourmet. If you try to make a gourmet donut, you end up leaving what a donut really is. Okay, I'm a donut man. I'm the old Canada. Donuts all the way. In old Canada, there wasn't a town that didn't have a donut shop every block on Main Street. Okay, 24 hours. Every one of them would be 24 hours. We'd know each other because we'd sit in those places and we'd smoke, and all the smoke would go inside the donuts, and you'd dip the donuts and they'd have this nice tobacco taste. But they all went out of business when this huge franchise, I should say this huge evil franchise took over, but I don't know. I don't know if we could blame the franchise or just think it's an unthinking arm of the great evil that is like just this corporate culture. Really, when I say that, I mean like I'm like I kind of feel like I'm the artist that isn't corporate, and everything is corporate out there. Corporate. Like when I say corporate, I don't mean like company. I don't mean the same thing as what people think. Like I don't know, like in politics, people say corporate and kind of means something different than what I'm saying. I'm talking as an artist. I'm not. This isn't about politics. Nothing is about politics here. I'm talking about art and culture here. And Canada used to be about donuts, and it's not about donuts anymore. And that kind of it's hard to get a good donut in Canada. This company came in, and this big franchise took over. Okay, they started making cheaper donuts, and they'd build places close to the other donut shops, and they'd have cheaper donuts, and they'd have contests and stuff like that. And they just all the other places went out of business after the smoking ban. Because they did the smoking ban, and then there was no reason to stay in the smoking places when the other place has a contest and their donuts are cheaper. Everybody just kind of sold out by leaving the mom and pop donut shops. I shouldn't get mad, but this is a passionate issue for any Canadian. It's like the British pub for the Brits. Okay, you talk to the Brits and you talk about the pubs, and it's a touchy issue. Every Brit remembers their old pubs, and that's what Canadians thought of donut shops. Okay, donut shops were like British pubs without the darts, and everything was a little uglier. In Canada, because like in Britain they're old, and things were built a long time ago when they built everything beautiful. But donuts instead of drinks in Canada. People got fat instead of drunk, except for me, whose monkey brain is always working on amusing itself. I mean, that's why I do art, because I have a monkey brain. Yeah, it's called a monkey brain. I used to live in Vancouver, and I know Chinese people quite well. I know their culture in some way, like as an outsider, and I have a monkey brain. Which is, I think it says more about Chinese culture than it says about me, I think. Anyway, because I think the monkey brain is kind of cool and entertaining for me to have. I'd rather have it than not have any kind of, I don't know, have a donkey brain or something. It's having a brain that's always amusing yourself, that burns up calories. It burns up way more than exercise, and that's why I was the only person that wasn't fat in my whole town. Every single person was fat. You want to lose weight? Read my comics. Listen to my music. It burns calories. El Shaddai too, or my Trump comic, or my other stuff. Just take a look at my links. I have them down below. You'll burn calories just reading them. You don't have to jog when you read them. Just really pay attention. I was the only one in my whole small town that wasn't fat. So they called me Skinny McGulliver. That's why they called me Skinny McGulliver. You know, I'd rather be called a wiener dog, but you know, you can't pick your nicknames. If you try to pick your nicknames, and you don't get it. I remember there was a kid in like grade 9, and he said, what was it? People in Burnaby used to call me Dirty Bird, and he wanted us all to call him Dirty Bird, and he would ask to be called Dirty Bird. And there's this guy named John French who's dead right now. Weirdly, he fell out of a truck, and he was trying to grab something. He opened the door and he was trying to grab something, and instead of grabbing it, he fell down and fell under the wheel. Anyway, this happened like 20 years ago. Sorry to his family. I shouldn't be really talking about it. Anyway, like he was a cool guy. He was really funny, like because he had this special skill of giving people nicknames. Okay, and very few people have this. It's a weird skill. Like some people have it, and it's like a magic skill almost. And he said, "Well, over here," like after the fellow said that, you know, in Burnaby they call me Dirty Bird, and then John French said, "Well, here we call you Fish Lips." And then after that, everybody called him Fish Lips. But I didn't. I couldn't do that. But, you know, it was still kind of funny. It's like you can't do that kind of thing anymore. It's not funny anymore. But it used to be funny. In the 20th century, there were things that were funny, and there were all sorts of things that were funny. Okay, but they're just not funny anymore. You know? Anyway, that's where I got Gulliver from, like Skinny McGulliver. That's my alias name, Nucky Gulliver. You know, nobody calls me Nucky Gulliver, but I wish they did, because Michael is a really boring name. It's Mike. You know, Mike, Michael, Miskell. My wife used to call me Miskell for a little while, and she stopped doing that. Yeah, Miskell. It's like the Polish one. I don't know what Ukrainian is. I'm Ukrainian, but we couldn't find the Ukrainian version. It's like we found Mikhail and Miskell, but what's the Ukrainian version? I don't know. Maybe someone could help me with that someday. I'll look around. I'll search far and wide. My mom tells me that Michael was an unusual name when she gave it to me. Do you believe it? There were 3 Michaels in every classroom. You know, I was usually Michael instead of Mike. The other one used to be Mike, and then I'd be Michael. And sometimes the other one couldn't be their name; they had to be their middle name or something. They had to change it, and that was a thing. Like in those days, like in the 20th century, it wasn't a bad thing. Your teacher could say, there are too many Michaels, so I'm going to call you Bill. And your name was Bill, and it wasn't a big deal. You weren't like, I'm dead now. You called me Bill. I just died. That's not the way it was in the 20th century. We had more fortitude, okay? People need fortitude, all right? Anyway, there'd be 3 of us in the classroom, and we'd deal with it. We'd deal with it the way we deal with it. I once worked at a place with a bunch of guys from El Salvador named Jose. They had an alphabetical system to differentiate themselves. The boss gave them the nicknames, and first Jose was called Jose A, the second Jose was called Jose B, and the third Jose was called Jose C, and the fourth was called Jose D, and the fifth was Jose F. Jose F kept the name. Like outside of work, he was Joseph. Like it sounded better, like to him, Joseph. He ended up becoming really popular with the Muslims, and he became a Muslim. Anyway, my dad was the boss. He was a pranker. Like yeah, he was always causing pranks and doing kind of kooky things, and he would give nicknames to everybody. You know, if you were lucky, you got a nickname. That's the thing. People might think, oh, what an insult, but it was a great honor. You know, people like my dad or John French, you know, they had a special ability to give people names that stuck. That's the whole thing. If you don't have the skill, you could give a name that doesn't stick. But if you have the skill, you give a name, and then all of a sudden everybody's using the name. And it's such a strange phenomenon. It's like a magic ability. Like I said earlier, that Keats, the poet Keats, he thought that words were magic. And I read his poem. I did this poem, Second Coming, and I I don't know if I would do it if I knew that he wasn't like a Satanist, but like he thought he was doing some sort of magic thing with the words, and he'd channel. He'd have his wife. I'm not talking about him right now. I'm going to talk about him next, like, or next week or something like that. So if I start talking about him, I'll use up all my Keats facts, and here I am trying to talk about Keats. But yeah, he's a good poet, but it's strange when here I am. I can't stop talking about Keats. Stop it. Yeah, I mean, he's a poet from 100 years ago. It's not that interesting. It's not going to get people to run to my station. Guys talking about Keats. Anyway, my dad grew up in an era when nicknames were normal. Everybody had nicknames back then. He had a friend named Punchy that he would talk about. Punchy, Peanuts, Cuz, Bird, Shep. Shep was my godfather. He died early. I didn't really have a godfather because Shep died. And I mean, Punchy died first. Peanuts, people that had nicknames died early. I wonder if Fish Lips or Dirty Bird is going to die early. I'm a Facebook friend with him. I should check to see if he's still alive. Huh. Anyway, I was like, you know, I didn't have a nickname. I don't think I've ever had a nickname. Oh, I did once. It was, I'm not even gonna say it. It's like, it sounds kind of corny. Anyway, I was stuck in that town. Everybody was fat. Everyone. Like, I don't say that to insult them. I just say it. It's like I was the one teased for being skinny. You know, why would I say it to insult them? Because they were the cool ones. My dad was 360 pounds at his top weight, and it was respected. He was bigger than everybody. He was taller. He was taller than me, and he was like huge. And in the world of fat people, he was the Nephilim. We call the Nephilim. He was the giant in that world. You know, everyone was overweight though. It was. I was disgusted with myself. It was me that I was disgusted with. Skinny McGulliver didn't help. I was Skinny McGulliver. Everyone made fun of me. I played along with it though. That's the only way to deal with it. Like when people are teasing you, you just play along with it. If I didn't laugh it off, they would get mad. Like why? It just only makes sense to laugh it off. So, I can't laugh it off. Just laugh it off. Like and then it turns into something positive. But this wasn't able to be turned into something positive because I was like a freak of nature. I was a freak of nature, you know. I like in a town where everybody's overweight. Like I mean, like really, really overweight, and you're skinny. Like you might think you're healthy, like in some other place. You might even be the ideal in some other place. But when every single other person other than you is like that, you're the freak of nature. And I was the freak of nature. Like they gave me the birthday bumps every Halloween, even though that wasn't my birthday. I was a freak. Like that was the message. You're a freak. We're going to give you the birthday bumps every Halloween. Anyway, I got to calm down a little bit. I'm gonna get like it's a difficult time of life. Like for me, like when it was just a very strange time. I was really glad to leave that town. I really was. My sister and brother and mother all lost weight like pretty fast, but my dad kept most of it because like out of like a nostalgic, just a feeling he didn't want to give it up. The fat cells were memories for him of being the boss. Like, why lose those mementos? Like that was his time of his greatest success in his life. So like he held on. The next place we moved was this big hotel we stayed at. We stayed at it for the whole winter time. My dad was writing a novel, which is really strange. Like it didn't end up getting published because he wasn't a writer. He wasn't good. He was basically just writing the same sentence over and over and over and over. It wasn't readable. It was boring, really 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 boring. It was a nice change of pace though, like not being bullied for being skinny, except for those two little fat girls. They were ghosts. I didn't care. I walked right through them. They tried to freak me out all the time. They wanted me to play with them. I don't know what they wanted me to play, you know. Yeah, what would play at me being freak of nature? No, thank you. No, thank you. And I don't need some ghost sucking machine. People think you need those in Canada, but you don't. That's a wives' tale. You don't need those ghost sucking machines. You just walk right through them. You know, remember when we used to call those wives' tales? Any ridiculous claim would be a wives' tale. Yeah. People were buying these ghost sucking machines, and it was a big thing in Canada for a little while. But like it ended up just being laughed at. Like a year later, people were laughing at the people that bought the ghost sucking machines. So ridiculous things happen all the time, everywhere. It's not that Canadians are absurd or anything. We're not absurd people, but we just get fooled. Like we get fooled all the time. Like it's a funny thing. Ghost sucking machines. They were just these tubes. Anyway, and you had to like scream into them. I never bought one, but I just heard about them. They were really, really like they seemed to be a scam. Obviously they were a scam. But I've never seen ghosts. I've never seen one. I can't say I believe them or disbelieve them or anything. It's just like maybe, I don't know. A lot of our wives have seen ghosts. That's our women see ghosts because we're so close to the aurora borealis. That's what they say. That's why the women see ghosts. The aurora borealis, if like the northern lights, if you prefer the plebeian nomenclature. Northern lights, aurora borealis, I prefer that. I think it just sounds prettier, right? Aurora borealis. It's kind of hard to say though. You have to like really, really concentrate on the words. Aurora borealis. It's hard for the English speaker. It's probably easy for the Italian. Okay? If you haven't seen the aurora borealis in the sky, you can be forgiven. Like if you don't know how to build an igloo, but if you haven't seen the aurora borealis in the sky, like it's fine. Like if you're not a Canadian, if you haven't seen the aurora borealis in the sky, but if you haven't seen the aurora borealis, I don't know if you can be called a Canadian. They used to say this about igloos, but they don't teach people how to build igloos in schools anymore here. I blame it all on drugs. Once drugs entered the culture, kids started making these hideouts, these igloo hideouts everywhere. And so we would have these igloo hideouts, and it wasn't like dangerous. That's the lie. That's the big Canadian lie, is they say that igloos were dangerous. They say that like some kid, like it caved in on the kid, and sometimes the story is a bunch of kids, and sometimes it's a girl, sometimes it's an 8-year-old girl, and sometimes it's a single mother that lost her baby, and it's ridiculous. The story never stays the same, and you can never find the definitive story. You can only find hearsay and hear the hearsay. Anyway, it was a really fun time. It's kind of like I'm sad. I'm not sad because like I wish my kids had it, but like what was crappy about it is like it didn't have to be bad kids culture, but the good kids, they never made anything so fun. It was the bad kids that did the fun thing. The bad kids made the igloo worlds. Like they would build these igloo places. They would They would have like igloos going from one place into another yard, and the igloos, they would miss the roads. No one ever got hit by a car like that. Like they would always worry, thinking like, oh, people are going to get hit by cars, but no. And we had these igloos everywhere. They were going from house and yard to yard, and they were in the schools and like everywhere, like besides forests, and like they couldn't keep track of all these little worlds that, like, all the bad kids were making. And like it's you can't, like, the adults would have to crawl, and adults don't like crawling. That's the whole thing, is they could get into the places, but you had to go crawl through these tunnels. And then we would have the rooms, and you'd have ghetto blasters playing, and kids would be smoking, and they'd be smoking pot and stuff like that. And the adults, they'd end up like, like we'd turn off the lights and everything if the adults came, and they'd get kind of scared. Like sometimes, like one guy actually started crying. It was weird. It was weird because it was Mr. McPhee. It was like I kind of felt sorry for him because he kept on going and he wouldn't stop. And we just it was really hard because I wanted to laugh. And I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop myself. And it was holding on, and so I had to wriggle out further and further down the tunnels, and finally I went far enough away so I could laugh. But then when I could laugh, I couldn't laugh anymore. When you want to laugh and you could finally laugh, and then you can't laugh, it's not funny anymore. Anyway. We'd have these igloo pads everywhere, and the government hated it, and a lot of the parents didn't like it. Like I think, like, it wasn't an issue where the government was against it, and like all the taxpayers were for it. And the parents hated it. They hated it. They wanted to tear them apart. Like it's like some kids would stay there all night long, and they'd be ready for parents to trash it, because the parents tried to trash it at first, but like they stopped them, and apparently got kind of I'm so punny. Apparently it got like kind of violent, and some of the parents like got beaten up really badly by teenagers, and it was a real humiliation. So none of the parents ever wanted to do that again. It freaked them out. And so we had, like, I think it was a nationwide thing. We had these igloos, and it was the coolest thing that ever happened. Like, it's the kind of thing that will never happen again, because they will stop it every time. Every time they try to start it up again, they stop it. It's I like, and I understand why. Like, I feel nostalgic to that time, but like, I had friends. They would go, like, they would live there all winter. Like they would escape from their parents' house, and they would just break into people's houses and outdoor freezers for their food, and have a barbecue there, like at the igloo places. It would be awesome. Like, we had blankets, and it was it's kind of nice in an igloo. Like, you don't understand until you've been in an igloo how awesome igloos are. They're better than anything, really. Like, I would trade houses for igloos if we could, but the whole thing is it melts. Like, when the weather gets warmer, it melts. So I don't want to. I'd rather have my house. Thank you. Anyway, that's our culture. They won't let us build igloos anymore. Damn it. I'm sorry for swearing. I don't say God in front of that word, because it's not damn as in damnation. When I say damn and I say, oh, sorry for swearing, it's because that's the Canadian law. When we say that, we have to say sorry for saying damn. And because damn, and we don't mean damn as in damnation, okay, we mean damn as in a beaver dam, because the beaver is the national animal for Canada. We are the beaver, okay? We eat beavers, and they're delicious. We only eat their tails, because in Canada, the beaver's body was considered sacred by some ancient tribe that died off 1,000 years ago. Our government scientists found that out, or they thought they found that out. I don't actually believe it. I think it's ridiculous. 1,000 years ago, they thought the beaver's body was sacred. Okay. Anyway, our government, they they thought or they claimed that they found hundreds of buried graves of beavers, with their tails cut off. We're not allowed to eat their tails anymore. This is a huge issue in Canada. This caused a scandal. This was a huge scandal. But all our news is government funded, so they ignored it, completely ignored the fact that we 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 love our beaver tails. This is this is a big problem in Canada, but people don't understand it outside of Canada because our government's able to hide it. Anyway, I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about our culture. Like, just I'm trying to write the great Canadian poem and draw the great Canadian drawing. We had the group of seven. You probably don't know the group of seven outside of Canada and in Flanders Fields. That's the great Canadian poem, okay? But I want to make the Canadian poem for today, and I want to make the Canadian drawing for today. I want to show the world what we're all about, other than the beaver. Like, everybody knows our beaver, and I don't feel guilty for the beavers. I really don't. 1,000 years ago, like I don't know those people. It's a national scandal. Canadians were tearing out their hair in the streets. That's why you see those bald girls in Toronto and Montreal still. They tore their own hair out. It was so bad that their heads were just these red blobs, these red shining blobs, and some of them can never grow hair ever again. All for the beaver. Like, was it really worth it? I don't know. Like, it looks weird too because their heads get this kind of scab-like covering that kind of from far away looks like hair, but then you get closer and it looks like a helmet they're wearing, and then you realize, oh, it's just this huge scab from their anger or their anguish over the beaver. And we love their tails. Like, they're delicious. Anyway, I've never seen anything so blood curdling, and their screams and their wet, sticky hair and all the guilt they project onto the regular Canadian citizen for those poor dead beavers. And it wasn't even their fault. They didn't kill the beavers, but they feel guilty about it. They didn't kill the beavers. It was me. I did it so I could eat their tails, and they were delicious. Every Canadian used to eat beaver tails. Every Canadian. Until that damn actor ruined everything. Sorry for swearing. Sorry. Ever since the beaver burial ground scandal, the word damn has been declared an official swear word because and it was a hoax, but it's still a swear word, and I have to say sorry every single time I say it. Or it's the law. It's the law. Anyway, that's modern Canada, and I'm just trying to cope in this new anti-beaver Canada. Bring back the beaver, I say. Bring back the beaver, so we can eat their tails.